I felt the sharp wire slicing through the initial layers of my throat. The need to cough was at the point of excruciating. I knew that if I did so, the wire would slip straight through my neck. I did not know how I would escape this torture, much like I thought the people I found in the rooms. Then the wire went loose, and the man fell to the ground like a sack of bones. I turned, clenching my bleeding neck, to see what had happened. I found the young boy, a chair firmly gripped in his hand. He had saved my life, when I was to save his. I bent down in eye level with the boy and pulled him towards me and gave him the hug he deserved. As I did, I felt time once again cease. I could have lived that moment forever. The bearded man started to grumble. I grabbed the boy's hand and we ran through the corridors to the front door, opened it, flung it shut. A man stood nervously in the door next to the bearded man's house. He was about to close the door behind him. I grabbed the boy in my arms, pushed the man and ourselves through the door, and closed it behind us. "You can't come in here," he said, quivering. "It's okay, we mean you no harm. But it's a mess. Believe me, we don't care what shape your house is in. The man next door, do you know him? He tried to kill me." I pointed to my neck. The man looked as if he was about to faint when he saw the blood-stained scar under my hand. His hands were firmly embedded in the light brown cardigan he wrapped around him. "I suppose I've no choice. You must think me somewhat awful. You see, I don't get many guests, and I'm not the tightest man. I suppose the two go in hand, but I suppose the world in the shape it is, these are the least of my worries." "Yes," I said, waiting for him to show me to the bathroom so I could clean my wound. I showed him my neck again. He got the idea and told me to clean myself up, and then we were to join him in the dining area. The dining room was a huge expanse. It was so big that only the center was lit. The outside edges were pitched in such darkness, I felt as if eyes, more I should say, the eyes of that bearded man next door watched us from the shadows. But it was such imagination that darkness brings about a man's weakest nerves. The boy, me, and our host sat at a large oblong table. "Allow me to introduce myself. I am Edward Greer, and you?" "James Bishop," I said. The boy told us his name. "Jason Sylvester." Then we tucked into food, which tasted of high quality, much like the house we found ourselves in. It was strange to be eating there after what had just happened to us. I kept expecting the bearded man to knock through the door. Maybe he still lay dying on the carpet of his house. Maybe he did not see us dart in this house. Whatever, we were safe, and while that was so, it was only fair that the boy and I should enjoy this respite. "Did you enjoy the dinner?" said Edward Greer. When we both told him that we did, the boy clapping his hands in enjoyment, he smiled as any host would. "I'm only glad there was enough on the table for us three. I only prepared it for myself, but such is my habit at making more than I need, more often than not. I find myself throwing good food away. Today is not going to waste, and there is some praise in that, is there not?" "How much food do you have left? I mean, it doesn't look like you go out much and have no servants, so what will you do when the food runs out?" He became nervous in his look, inept. "I had not thought of that. I'm no survivor. I thought of having to go out. It horrifies me. I am a homely person, you see. I very much like my own company. I suspect I shall die, as all will." The boy looked with sadness up to his once joyful host. "But mister, why don't you go out and get some food? It's free now. You don't have to pay. Me and my dad, we went to a shop and filled up our car. It's all free now, all of it, whatever your heart desires." "Yes," he said, but I felt he was saying it more to comfort the boy, as his eyes returned to me after saying so, as if to tell me the real answer that he dare not utter in front of the innocent boy. "Well, will you take tea with me in the study, I think?" He led us to the study. While he went over to brew the tea, I took this opportunity to speak to the young boy. "How are you?" I said, rather ineptly. "I'm fine, sir. Thank you for looking after me. It's very kind of you. You're like my dad." A lump came to my throat. What a kind thing to say to a complete stranger who had only done what any other stranger would do. I placed my hand lovingly on his golden hair. It was nothing. What happened to your father? I continued. Like I said to Mr. Greer, we went shopping. We were loading up the car, then a gang of 4 or 5 men, I don't rightly remember how many, pushed my dad into the car and me to the ground. Then I woke up to find the car gone. As he spoke, I wondered if these men had been the same that had killed the Premier and had destroyed that hotel. Why they should do such things I had no idea, but it was as if now that law and rules were over, men would do as they see fit, much answering why these things were there in the first place. Edward Greer walked briskly into the room, a gentle smile on his face, a tray with a golden tea set with cups and saucers as well. He placed it on the table and began to pour a cup of tea, which he handed to the young boy. As he did so, I walked up to the shelves that lined the 3 sides of this room. The reading was varied: Dickens, Shakespeare, Wells, Orwell, with history of the world, Second World War, medical encyclopedias. I commented on this vast material. Every man must have his hobby, he stated. I went to the 4th wall. A large covering hung over a dusty window. I peered through the side of the curtain through the layer of dirt. I rubbed a gap to see through, just enough for my eye's view, and saw a courtyard extended far away. 2 cars. Compared to the cities I had seen, this one looked, I imagined, much the same as it did before. We sat talking about our stories. I told them of some of my adventures, as did the boy, about him and his father, how they escaped their council flat when the fog came their way, until it was very late indeed. Edward showed us to 2 rooms next to his, and we retired, much exhausted, for the night. The morning must have awoken with a cock crowing, but this was not how we were woken up. A large crash downstairs was heard, then the sound of heavy boots running up to the stairs. I bolted upright, got my door, opened it, only to be confronted with a bearded man. How stupid, I thought. We felt so comfortable here. We should have left in the middle of the night and gone far away. Now, despite escaping, we were once again amongst this maniac. He grabbed me by the arm and threw me to the ground. I hit the wall with a thud. The 2 doors opened, and out came the boy and Edward. I shouted to Edward to take the boy, as I saw the bearded man reaching out for him. "Of course," said Edward, pulling the boy within his protective arms, almost cradling him. The bearded man remained still. I expected him to finish me off, and into those few moments of silence, I felt a strange unease. "Have you quite finished?" said Edward, facing the bearded man. "No," said the bearded man. I stood up, ready to defend myself some more. "I don't know why you have to be so rough," continued Edward. "Rough? It's better than wine and dining them." "He's so vulgar," said Edward, facing me. He continued, "Allow me to introduce you, my erstwhile cousin, Thomas Greer." "What?" I said. "What do you mean? You know him?" "It is so unfortunate you had to find out like this. This is not the way it's done, but my cousin is so impatient, aren't you?" "He is such a wimp," said the bearded man. "He would have drugged you with your breakfast, and I would have taken you. He doesn't like his victims to know him as a killer." "I am not a killer." He opened the door to the left and opened it out to the room I had already seen. It was the man on the rack. My eyes betrayed my confusion. "Yes, you see, this is one house. When you came out, you walked into my side of the house. I don't like living with him. He makes so much noise. I like my peace and quiet, always have. So you see, I would have drugged you. My cousin would have carried you to my rooms, put you on my toys. Then I would turn a few knobs, pull the lever or so forth, and you thought these rooms were my cousin's. No, he only assists me. I don't like physical contact. He handles all that. He gets them and so forth. I set up the toys and handle the pain and drugs. It's much more polite and dignified the way I handle things, not like my cousin. He'd have just skinned you off the bone, and we would have eaten you for dinner." I could not believe what he was saying. All along we thought the bearded man was the killer. Those rooms I found in his house, but it was one big house, and those rooms were Edward Greer's, a man who cordially entertained and fed us. It was he who administered the pain, the torture, he, the quiet and almost inept one, the killer, and his rough, vulgar cousin, just the lackey. "See what I mean?" said Thomas Greer. "A wimp. Can't touch the bodies. Doesn't like to get his hands blooded. But I must do as he says. We all must have our hobbies." Thomas, as he had done when we met him, began to cough and shake. "See, can't very well do the killing myself. Not now that I get these damn shakes. It wouldn't be fair on them, not like this." His cough got violently worse. Blood sipped out of his mouth. In a long trail, he coughed up some white balls. Then he held his stomach tight, as if something was rummaging around inside. Then he fell with a scream so loud with a thud head first. His cousin Edward Greer dropped to his knees. "What's wrong with him? Tommy, say something. What's wrong? Are you all right?" But it was obvious he was dead. Maybe this was as Harkins said, the other way the fog would kill us, those that survived the initial waves. Edward held onto Thomas's head. A clump of hair came away, and Thomas' head dropped back to the ground, loss of the hair. Edward Greer wailed and shouted, "No, no, no," continuously. His tears were as if he had lost all the world. How pathetic, I thought, this evil man with a sugary smile. He had his comeuppance. It felt only fitting that this man, Edward Greer, who had inflicted so much pain through his torturous ways, should have pain too, from the only thing that would have inflicted upon him, the loss of his accomplice, his cousin. I picked the boy up, and we left Edward Greer as he wailed over the dead corpse of his cousin. I broke into one of the cars outside. Inside the house, Edward's mood had turned into rage. He started to smash things about the house. As he did so, he knocked over a lantern. A fire caught some paper on the floor, and it wasn't long till it lit up the books on the 3 sides of the wall. From the window on the 4th side, I saw him banging his fists on the double-glazed glass. I looked straight into his terror-stricken eyes, turned away as he continued to bang, almost in vain. Slowly I started the ignition, released the handbrake, pressed my foot on the accelerator a little, and drove off slowly down the gravelled courtyard, as Edward Greer, fully alight, screaming within the flames, as he was about to join his dead cousin, Thomas Greer.